in the studio this morning is longtime owner of Turnbull Funeral Home, Mr. John Turnbull. Good morning.
Good morning, Vanessa. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
You sure handle that a lot easier than I.
The weather?
All of the talk.
It's practice.
Yeah, I know.
Practice.
You own the place, though.
One of, yeah. Well, speaking of ownership, this is a big day, a really great opportunity that I have to talk with you, John, about some big changes coming to Turnbull Funeral Homes.
Yes, ma'am. We're real close to July 1, and that's sort of where I've announced my retirement from active funeral service. When I started in this business with my father, we did funerals and visitations and gatherings just almost all the time. And now that has totally changed in the day and the customs and society. And I guess at 75, I've been a first responder for over 50 years. And I think it's now time for me to slow down a little bit and let some others do all that.
Okay.
And that's what we're currently doing. My family's done this for over 40 some years. And down in Biggsville, I have the Heritage Museum, and it's artifacts from their day and the things they used to be undertakers and go out into the houses with parlor funerals and grieving and so forth. And my plan is to actually not entertain public visitations and funerals in this facility here in Monmouth, but we're going to move the museum into here, all their artifacts and so forth. I won't have room to gather the public or do public visitations and funerals and other services, but I will be the manager and I would call it curator, but the operator of the Turnbull Heritage Museum. Now that's not going to happen overnight because you don't move a museum overnight. It's going to take me a little bit and some folks to help me move those artifacts into the Monmouth place, but I have to move the chairs first because I've got a lot of chairs set up in there and I'm not going to have the public using them. I need to move them so I can move the artifacts in and begin displaying and inviting the public into my museum. And I would like to be the operator or the owner of that museum, and it'll let me go places and see my family and have a little more time to myself.
Yeah.
But I can still own and manage that. Now, The other thing that is happening is I built a funeral home in Oquawka. I built it in memory of my father. He died in 1989, David. And he always wanted a funeral home down there, and after his death, I went down there and I did build a funeral home, put it up for him, in honor of him. And since 1991, I've run it successfully, I hope, and it's been a gathering place and a place for visitations and funerals for the town of Oquawka. And I'm kind of dead set that that's going to remain a funeral home. It's not going to be turned into anything else other than a place for the public and the visitations. And my friend Mark Thomas from Watson Thomas in Galesburg is buying that facility from me, and he's going to be the management, and I will work for him because I'm still licensed and still able to do things in funeral service and still have the equipment. I've done it for my career, and that has worked out as part of my plan for retirement, and I'm very happy about that. I'm really excited about that. I'm going to move a museum out of a facility in Biggsville, and we're moving it back into Monmouth here, and I'm going to label this a museum. But I also have a group that's very interested in coming into ownership of that facility in Biggsville too, which also works and plays into the plan that lets me retire, if I may. I would say my retirement of sorts. I think I will be doing what I would like to do. I'm not going to be as actively in the retail business of funerals and visitations and cremations as I would be if I stayed in business. So, all in a nutshell.
Yeah. It's 8:16. We're talking with John Turnbull. He is the owner of Turnbull Funeral Homes in Oquawka and here in Monmouth, and then the Biggsville Heritage Museum. Some big changes coming July 1st. Retirement from active funeral services. But if I heard you correctly, you'll move the Biggsville Heritage Museum to the location here in Monmouth.
Correct.
And the Oquawka Funeral Home location in memory of your father, David, will be in a contract with Mark Thomas from Watson Thomas Funeral Home, and you'll work for him over the next few years.
Exactly right.
Okay, exciting. Well, congratulations on semi-retirement.
Thank you.
It's been a
Semi
while.
would be a way to put it.
Yeah. Remind people now, this starts all the way back to Blackburn and Turnbull.
Correct, and I do want to speak to that.
Okay.
Maybe you want to turn that.
We've got a camera going. This will be on our YouTube.
I brought this along because this is what I call a chapel chair. And in the old days, they didn't have cars and airplanes. They had buggies and buckboards, and they had horse-drawn hearses. And 1884 is before airplanes and cars and electricity and all of that. They had candelabra. And they used to wake bodies in the parlor of homes. And then they were buried in either the churchyard or I think in Monmouth here, it would have been the Pioneer Cemetery, I think, is where they first buried here in this town. And that was started, if I'm not mistaken, in 1830. When was Monmouth founded?
Good question. The college was what, 1850 something?
I think.
So, yeah, I have no idea.
So it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I brought this along because I could carry it up here. And the interesting part of this is that it is a chapel chair. And you can see them putting a dozen of these on the buckboard and taking it into the parlor of a home.
And the red velvet felt?
Correct. And it's the original on there. And the undertaker, as they called him an undertaker because he would go into that home and move aside their things and take over the household duties. And he was called an undertaker for that reason. He would put a door badge on the front of the house so that the traveling salesman would know that household is in grieving.
Okay.
And they wouldn't call on that household to sell their wares. But the nice thing about this chair, the museum people really wanted this because on the seat of that, it has Blackburn and Turnbull. Charles Blackburn was the liveryman. He moved, the country was moving from east to west. The society was moving into new places. And livery people went to the railhead, which we had down here, with their wagons and would take their dome-top trunks and move them into the households. And they also provided taxi service and buggies for people to rent and use or take people various places. The museum people saw that, and it puts the name with the vintage. And they told me they would really like me to give this to them, but I didn't do that. They said, don't touch it. Just leave it the way it is, because it is very antiqued the way it is.
Yeah.
And if I go and change things on that, it's new. And they didn't like that. They wanted the original.
True.
And that's kind of the vintage of the museum.
Yeah.
I brought this up just as a piece that I could carry up here.
Yeah, I've been through the museum. You took Mike and I through there last year, I believe. So it's amazing how things have changed. I mean,
my.
We think about,
new day.
Yeah, the obvious things that we see that have changed, but even society and how they grieve has changed.
Customs and traditions are not the same.
Yeah.
When I started in 72 with my father, we buried 90% of the people in cemeteries. And there were a few cremations, and now it's just totally reversed. And that's fine. It's what society wants. I have no problem with that, as long as they get what they want.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my whole point of my whole career. I wanted to do what people want, no matter what. And I think at this point, I would back that up 100%. Mark Thomas in operations of this place in Oquawka, I want people to have what they want. And if it's nothing or it's everything, that's fine. I'll help. I would love to help. I don't want to just retire and go away. I'm not going to Florida. I'm going to live in the facility here. I will be in Monmouth, and I have licenses with the state that I'm maintaining. And we'll work with the museum, and I'll be here. I want to be here for my friends.